Hello and welcome to this edition of Dr. Clark Reports. I'm your host, Gary Clark, and my guest is my friend C. Ray Nagin, who is the mayor of the city of New Orleans. And Mayor Nagin, greetings and welcome.
Dr. Clark, it's great to be here. Like that opening. Looks like you're improving all the time, which is what we all should be doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Change is coming. Oh, yes. So, Mayor Nagin, will you please tell my viewing audience about the structure and duties of your office as mayor of the city of New Orleans?
Well, you know, the mayor of the city of New Orleans is responsible for just the chief executive officer of the city of New Orleans, the chief political officer also. So I have responsibility for just about everything you see as it relates to the administration of the city's business. That relates to fire, police, sanitation, grass cutting, potholes, street repairs, economic development, construction related, you name it and we have it. And basically it's organized just like most organizations. I have a chief administrative officer that has a lot of the functions. I have a chief technology officer which has been doing, who has been doing a lot of work as it relates to technology. I have a housing department. I have a city attorney. I have a homeland security person, and the list goes on and on. So it's a pretty full plate.
I see that. So within that frame, that means that it requires a certain amount of managerial skills as well as political skills.
Well, it does. The city of New Orleans is a huge organization. Our budget is over $500 million a year as it relates to the operating budget. And then we have capital dollars that we spend to fix things like playgrounds, libraries, and what have you. We just passed a huge bond issue of $260 million, and we're starting to work on that. But it's very vast. And in addition to just regular city work, I have responsibility for the airport, for the Sewage and Water Board, and some other agencies like the French Market Corporation and those type, the Downtown Development District, the Canal Street Development District. So it's quite a bit.
It's vast. I'm looking now at public services. When you're looking at public services, how do you prioritize in terms of what becomes most important?
Well, you basically try and look at the needs. This is what I do. I try to look at the needs first coming into office, and I noticed that we needed to kind of clean up our image. We need to stimulate the economy to generate some jobs, and we needed to invest in our infrastructure. And we went about the business of dealing with that. Along the way, the perceptions and realities of crime started to crop its head. So right now, I would say the biggest priority we have in the city is public safety as it relates to making sure that our citizens are safe. The crime statistics overall are trending down, but the murder rate is the most nagging thing, and even that is a little above last year, but it's just the types of murders that our young people are committing in the city.
Horrific.
Just keep people on edge.
Yes, and I see what you're saying as well in terms of looking at this. So in the delivery of these public services then, and you prioritize in terms of what becomes important, you see then that what I see is important is the personality of leadership.
Yes.
What is the personality of leadership that you bring to your job?
Well, I'm a pretty even-keeled person, and I look at leadership as something that has to be, you have some ingrained traits in you, but you also try and look at the situations and adjust your style according to what needs to be done. I've had to do that, obviously, coming from the private sector, being in business most of my career, to now being in politics. So I try and take an analytical approach. I try and make sure that I have as much information as possible, and then I also try and filter that through what's the realities of politics. How does this impact the people? How do I get the biggest bang for the buck to make the biggest impact on the city that I love?
I see what you're saying, because sometimes there can be, I don't want to say a conflict, but when it comes from the public and private sector, there was a big initiative I know 10, 15 years ago to have public-private sector partnerships. Yes. Do you see a reemergence of this?
I see it coming back, and it's the only way that government can leverage the dollars that they have to spend. Previous administrations, and not to disparage anybody, but they were trying to use the money that the public sector had to solve all the problems of the city. We have since taken our federal dollars, for example, and our state and our local dollars, and leverage them with private enterprises to instead of having $50 million, we can leverage it to $100 or $150 million by using other people's money along with it. And it's been working very, very well.
I like that. Leverage.
Yes.
And again, that's coming from the corporate sector, because you understand the nature of leverage.
Well, there's no way we can possibly tax everybody in this city to handle all the needs that are in this city. So we have to figure out creative ways to stretch the dollars, and so far we've been okay with that.
To date, what is it that you're quite proud of?
You know what, there's so many things. I think when I look back on the original promise of Ray Nagin, why should you vote for me for mayor? I said a couple of key things in my covenant with the people the people of this city. I said, look, I was going to come in with a fresh perspective. I was going to come in being very independent, so meaning I was going to make some decisions that were going to upset some people, but hopefully would move the city in a better direction. Next, I said, look, I'm going to clean up our image. I'm going to work to clean up our image to make sure that people locally feel better about New Orleans, and around the country and around the world feel better about New Orleans. You know, next I said I was going to focus on the infrastructure of our city, building it up because we had so many neglected assets that needed so much attention. And then I also said I was going to bring some technology, and by doing all that, we would stimulate the economy, start to create more jobs and opportunities for everyone, so that our young people could stay here and have more options for jobs.
I see that. We just came out a while back of the legislative session.
Yes.
Were you satisfied with that session?
I was satisfied and quite surprised, pleasantly surprised with the initiatives that we put in our legislative package and what actually passed. Just about everything we put forward passed. We had to really work hard to make sure that our Hollywood South initiative was protected, because the governor and her administration was thinking about altering the tax credits associated with the films that are being filmed in New Orleans. And we have like $300 or $400 million worth of films that have been produced over the past 2 years in and around the city of New Orleans. So we beat that back. We passed another piece of legislation I'm really proud of that is going to deal with video games manufacturing. There's another incentive package that we put forward.
That's unique.
And it passed.
Yes.
And the thing about the language is that the language is flexible enough where it also will encourage computer software development companies to the area. So we're really excited about that. We passed a bill that deals with having our local musicians take advantage of all the films that are being produced. So you now get a tax credit if you're using local musicians to do your movie scores. So
yes.
That was passed also. We have another one where we're the #1 importer in the United States of raw material called rubber, and we have a rubber manufacturing incentive, jobs incentive package. So we've had a lot of success this past legislative session, and it's due to a lot of hard work by our legislators and our staff.
I see what in each of those initiatives, it appears as though what they've created is an expanded tax base.
Well, expanded tax base, but also the incentives to overcome, you know, there's lots of perceptions about New Orleans and Louisiana that business people have. We don't have the best public education system. You know, we don't have a skilled workforce. So we're trying to put incentives so they can come down and test us. And then once they get here, they're going to have a great experience, and they're going to probably be more than willing to expand. The city, our economy right now is tipped in a very positive direction. All the economic statistics, whether it be job creation, we're the #1 city in America as it relates to wage growth. Our tourist industry has had back-to-back record years, and the list goes on and on. And the thing I'm most proud of is that when you look at the census data, since 2000, we've taken 37,000 people off the poverty rolls in the city of New Orleans.
And that works toward this whole concept, which is a big issue right now, poverty reduction.
Well, we have to do something about it. You know, in 2000 we had 130,000 people technically classified in the poverty rolls. Now we're at about 90,000. So we're making some progress, but we still have a long way to go.
I like what you said also earlier about perception. How do we influence the perception of New Orleans in the state?
I think it's just going to take us being diligent and continuing to accentuate the positives of New Orleans. Sure, we have our challenges just like any other big city, but we as New Orleanians seem to delight in beating ourselves up. The media, they will put the worst of New Orleans on over and over, and it just plays in our psyche, and that's all we pay attention to. And we don't realize that other people are coming to our city and saying, my God, you have a marvelous jewel. There's no other city like New Orleans. And we need to, you know, celebrate that sometime.
And you're so correct. The night out against crime.
Night out against crime. Crime is probably what's on most people's mind in this city, and it relates to the types of crime that we're having and, you know, what's going on in the community. Basically, there's been a breakdown among our young people as far as the public education system, so they're checking out, they're dropping out of school. As a result of that, they're trying to survive, and they're turning to something you and I wouldn't do, which is a life of crime or the drug game.
Precisely.
And when somebody gets shot or hurt in the community, the criminal justice system is, the police are arresting them and they're coming right back out, they're arresting them. So street justice has taken over. And in street justice, you know, basically who has the bigger gun wins.
And who gets the last shot. And that appears to be the psyche, the culture that's developing. Is there a way that you think that we can curb this?
Well, you know, it's going to take some time. I think that the imagery of what our young people see on a day-to-day basis as it relates to what's in the movies, what's on the videos, what's on TV, and what they value. They value the materialistic things that you and I say are secondary. You know, if we have a good idea, we work hard, we're in America, we start a business, we can make as much money as we can. But it may take some time. Most of our young people don't have any patience. So they want the quick money, the quick success, and they want to have the bling bling, as they call it. And what that's doing, that's driving us to a culture of, you know, dog eat dog. And it's really unfortunate.
It's self-defeating.
Yes.
And I know I'm not a sociologist by any means, but it's self-defeating, and it will bring your whole system into decay.
Well, it is, and you know, but I think the solution is men in the community have to step forward. The black men in the community have to say, look, I'm sick and tired of this. I need to be a better father myself. If you have children, you know, take care of your children, but also reach out, because we have so many single parents in this community. Reach out to somebody else's kid, particularly a young boy, and teach them how to be a proud, successful, ethical black man.
Yes, I see what you're saying. Now, again, it comes to parenting skills and individuals becoming involved, reaching out, as you say.
Absolutely. Beyond just your sibling that you have fathered directly, you should be a father to the kids in the community, because once they see more proud black men in the community versus what they're seeing on a daily basis may be, you know, the drug dealers that they're admiring. If they start to see more professional men in the community that are doing good things, then I think we can turn this around.
And there are, and it is indeed a fact that there are individuals out there that we see growing up. You can look at the men and women you know your neighborhood, and you say, we see what this person is doing, what that person is doing, and they become quiet models for success.
Yes.
And development.
And that's what needs to happen. But you know, unfortunately, we talk a lot about the 60s and the flight to the suburbs, and white flight hurt, you know, the inner cities. And I think that's true. But I think black flight to the suburbs also hurt the inner cities, because a lot of kids lost role models. You know, if most of the professionals are living out in the suburbs, then what's left in the inner cities, the kids don't have the role models that they need. So as people are starting to move back in the city, I'm talking to the black professionals and saying, look, don't be left out there in the suburbs. Folk are moving back in, you better get your butts back in here, and you can help us to turn the city around.
And these individuals have jobs that folks may not even be aware of, the types of occupations that they possess and have.
Yeah, there's lots of great, skilled folk out there. We just need to get them back in the fold, helping us to turn the city around.
You're absolutely correct. Again, I would like to remind my viewers that I'm Gary Clark, and this is Dr. Clark Reports. And my guest is my friend C. Ray Nagin, who is the mayor of the city of New Orleans. And Mayor Nagin, I know that you're a child of the city and you're from here, but will you please tell my viewing audience the C. Ray Nagin story?
Well, you know, most people,
Yes.
with the spin that's kind of out there that, I'm this and that. And, I grew up in this city. I was born in Charity Hospital, grew up in the 6th and the 7th wards, went to public education, got a high school diploma from Old Perry Walker across the river. I attended Clark before my parents moved on the West Bank. So this is home for me. I know how to second line and, eat the best food and do all that good stuff. And then I went away to college. I played baseball and basketball. And I had a baseball scholarship to Tuskegee University.
What was your position?
I pitched and played first base. Went to Tuskegee, learned so much at that university. Historically black college, George Washington Carver started, Booker T. Washington. Just learned about what black people can accomplish. And because I was so sheltered before I left there, because they really didn't teach that, in the high schools when I was growing up. So from there, traveled around the country, lived in Dallas, Detroit, Los Angeles, and then came back to New Orleans. Was primarily in business, was doing well, running a huge corporation, Cox Communications. Probably was the 5th largest telecommunications company in America. Was an entrepreneur, had a ice hockey franchise, and
oh yes,
was just kind of out there looking at the city and dissatisfied. One day, my son was getting ready to graduate from high school, and he said he was going to college. I asked him what he was going to do, and he and his friends, to a person, said they didn't see a future in New Orleans. So then I started to think politically, how can I make a difference, and how can I make this city better for the young people? So I decided to run.
And the germ of that was to look at your kids and see that they were dissatisfied.
Absolutely. Well, a couple of things. I was probably mentally going through a transition because I was at this state in corporate America where I was kind of unconsciously competent. So it was a challenge, but it wasn't a stretch. So I was just going about my business, living well, traveling all about, but I wasn't really truly challenged. And fundamentally, I'm kind of a challenge freak. I'm always looking for the biggest and the best challenge. And I think I found it in City Hall.
In politics, oh yes. Yeah. Who were some individuals who influenced you along the way? Who influenced you professionally and personally?
I tell you, there's so many people.
Yes.
Growing up, there were teachers along the way in elementary school and high school, and of course in college there were some professors. Business people, I admire Reginald Lewis, who owned Beatrice Foods, who did this incredible leverage buyout, was an incredible entrepreneur. Bob Johnson, who owned BET. There's so many people. My father, my mother.
What did they do that was so important in your life to develop your leadership skills?
Well, I think that what they did was they set an example. And they set an example that basically said, look, my father, for example, worked 2 jobs most of my life that I can imagine. He would go in early in the morning and his first job, and then his second job, and basically the weekends is when I spent most of my time with him. But what he was always telling me is that, look, man, if you're going to work hard and keep your nose clean and don't really get in trouble, there's nothing you can't do in this world. And my mother, of course, she instilled in me certain values about doing things the correct way, working hard. My mother was is very analytical, so she taught me the math skills and how to look at life. And of course, I had my grandparents who taught me a lot also.
Those are the things which were important. What was your first job?
My first job was working in City Hall. As a matter of fact, it was a summer program for teenagers, for youth.
Oh, yes.
And I ended up working in the Department of Streets, just kind of running errands and doing some light analytical work. But that's kind of where it all started.
Right there.
Yes.
And if I can turn the conversation again, when you travel the world and travel this nation, what is the image the individuals say to you when you first meet them? What do they say about New Orleans? When they say, "Hello, Mr. Mayor, I know you're the mayor of New Orleans," what is their statement to you?
Well, you know, initially their face lights up, and it's just kind of a glow comes over them. And for the most part, I love New Orleans. I love the food. I love the people. I love the culture. I love the music. And I don't care where you go. When you mention New Orleans, people's faces light up. Now, of course, then they turn to, you know, well, I hear, you know, you guys have colorful politicians down there, and you have, you know, it's hard to do business down there if I'm talking to business people. But for the most part, their initial reactions are, we love New Orleans, we want to visit, we've been there and we visited, and we had a great time. Tell me more about New Orleans. How can I do business down there?
Are there any mayors that you see or that you like in our nation that you see that they're doing a pretty effective job? Are there some models out there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. When I first came in office, I would go to the U.S. Conference of Mayors events where all the mayors would gather and share stories. Mayor Willie Brown out of San Francisco is a good friend, good man. Shirley Franklin, the mayor of Atlanta, is a great lady that's doing wonderful work. The mayor of Washington, D.C., Mayor Williams, is a tremendous guy that's doing good things. Mayor Daley in Chicago is unbelievable, unbelievable. Oh, yes. But he is the man. He takes care of business in Chicago.
Everyone knows that.
Oh, he is the man. Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick and I are friends in Detroit, which I understand he's kind of going to have a tough race going forward. So it just depends. But you know, I try and open myself up to all of them, because the great thing about coming together as mayors, we have common problems, and sometimes we have unique problems, but then we share ideas on how to solve them.
And that's the beauty of those sort of conclaves, those sort of conferences.
Yes.
Now, when in our community now, and when we're going through a number of difficult periods in the city,
yes,
in the city, to say the least. But what has been, from your vantage, the greatest challenge that you've had?
You know,
be it public, political,
man, I had
personal, whatever.
I had no doubt that we could get in and clean up our image and get the economy stimulated and get significant investments going in the infrastructure of our city. And we've done that. We've got over $3–4 billion worth of construction-related activity going on. And we're having people to participate at a much higher level, particularly black folk. What I worried about back then and I worry about now is how do we make sure that there's equity in the economics of this city.
So you're saying combating the black-white economic issue?
Absolutely. Yes. For every dollar a white-owned firm makes in the city of New Orleans, a black-owned firm makes 1 cent. There's just a total disparity for a lot of different reasons. And what I'm trying to do is force this city to deal with its racial hang-ups, if you will. And I'm not just talking about black on white. I'm talking black on black and white on white. Being mayor of the city of New Orleans, the biggest struggle I have is that I feel like I'm in a huge tug of war. And every time I do something that's perceived to benefit the black community, the white community gets upset. Every time I do something that's perceived to benefit the white community, the black community, and I'm like, this is supposed to be one New Orleans. And I understand race is an issue.
Right.
But how are we going to move past it? And what I've tried to teach the community is that let's look at ourselves in the mirror, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We have some racial problems. Let's try and deal with them. But let's deal with them in a way where we just don't get hollow political power without economic power also.
Like what you say, hollow political power.
Yeah. We have all the political power that anybody could possibly want. There's a black mayor in this city, there's a black city council majority, black school district majority, black police chief, black this, you can go down the list. But when it comes to the economics of this city, there's not a lot there. And look, we have been bought into the trap, we being black folks, thinking that political power, I go get me a little contract from the politician that I know and everything is good. But when that person gets out of office, you're done.
Precisely.
And what I'm trying to do is get people to see, look, you might want to get some political contracts or some contracts from government, but you want to participate in the private sector. because you want to be able to have a business that's sustainable and that you can pass wealth down to your children. And the only way you can do that is if you have a business that is not solely dependent upon any one source of revenue. And black folks in this city spend so much money, but they're not spending it with black businesses. So therefore, we've got to break that cycle. We have to get some black businesses started, and we have to get black folks in this city saying, if I'm going to go buy anything, I'm going to look to see if there's a black business out there that I can buy from first. Not to necessarily not go buy from white-owned businesses, but the Jewish people do this. The Italian people do it. Everybody does it but us.
And then there's another divide that exists as well, the regionalism, the regional divide. How do we address that in the remaining few minutes that we have?
I think that's going to be something that's going to come. What I try and do with people is to kind of appeal to an emotion that's really strong for them. And when I start talking about the airport and we're getting ready to spend $5 billion and we might move it, that gets some people's attention, you know. So while we have their attention, let's see if we can figure out a way to create a win-win. Now, they're going to try and take everything from New Orleans, and I know that, and I'm not going to let them do it.
And that's their mission.
But at some point, maybe we'll come up with a compromise that works. And if they don't want to play reasonable, then we'll just walk away from the table.
I like that the Dizzy Gillespie theme, to find a happy medium.
Yeah, if you can, and you can't always do that, but that should be the objective.
It should be. And if we can get away from the regional divide and the racial divide that you say also exists within the community, then perhaps we can find the sort of political economic growth that's important.
Well, you know what I like what's going on in the city right now is that there's dialogue happening everywhere, at the water coolers, at restaurants, what have you, on race relations. And the fact that the NAACP marched on Bourbon Street, and at the end of that march, all the tourist industry leaders got together and were in solidarity saying we're not going to tolerate discrimination. It sent an incredible signal around the country, and as a result, we had the largest Essence Festival ever.
And you're so correct. In the remaining few minutes that we do have, will you please tell my viewing audience your vision for your office at this point? Where do you truly want to carry the city?
Well, you know, the first 4 years were about fundamentals, cleaning up. We had budget deficits and image problems and corruption and all that stuff. We want to clean all that up. We put the technology in place, but you can sit at home in your pajamas and do business with city government. We've got the economy tipped. It's all moving in the right direction. It's not perfect, but we're not done. The second 4 years, I want to focus on sustaining that growth, sustaining what we have, institutionalizing it, and making sure that there's equity and that more black businesses are being started. There's a stronger black middle class in our community, and the cycle and the economy just keeps expanding. And at the end of the day, you can have a city that competes with Houston, Dallas, Atlanta, and all those other great cities.
You're so correct. And we have the greatest resource.
Everybody wants to come here. They would kill for what we have. Condominiums are selling at incredible rates here because people want to move to New Orleans.
And Mayor Nagin, I want to thank you for joining me. And it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And I want to say thank you to my viewers for tuning in. And as always, it's been a pleasure.